Chiempo has access to Sucker Punch on most builds, so having that priority damage is just so nice to have when you are kind of looking at how Chiempo can really help optimize your team, especially against all of the different speed control options that are available in the metagame right now. And so I wonder how, you know, Victor Medina is going to kind of navigate this matchup, because while his team is relatively familiar, I think what Leonardo is running on the other side is way more of an unknown. And even just Leonardo as a player, he ended up getting top 8 at the Bogota special event in 2023, and he did win the Costa Rica special event in 2017. So he's been a part of the competition for a little while, but this is really like one of his best performances to date already, making a day 2 at a huge LAIC, and also just being able to contend with the best players in VGC right now.
That's the thing, the international championships are a level up from regional and special event titles. Again, both of these players well known within their respective regions, having a very strong presence, we can clearly see from their results, but you want to be able to try and take an international record as a way to add to that roster. When asked about your previous accomplishments, Victor Medina's team here as well, we've spoken a little bit about the Firewater Grass core that we've seen so dominantly between Urshifu, Arcanine and Rillaboom, and with the combination of that Chiempo as well, being able to use that sort of ruin ability to boost up the offensive capability of the physical attackers that all 3 of those core Pokemon are, does give Victor a lot of immediate pressure out there on the field, because with the ability of Chiempo, it doesn't even have to lead out straight away. You can switch it in from the back and capitalize on that ability, activating immediately.
Yeah, I want to know how Victor's going to kind of play around that sort of aspect of things. Yeah. I think when you take a look at this matchup, I think it's really easy to identify that there's some really great Pokemon on Leonardo's side that are going to be able to put on some pressure in more of that offensive situation, also in the higher speeds here. But let's also take a look at kind of the bottom end of things.
Yeah, I mean, the question you asked me yesterday, Rosemary, was where is the Trick Room? Now, this team isn't necessarily a hard Trick Room team by any mode, but I do see the move on there. Let's take a closer look at their 6 Pokemon. On Leonardo's side, we've got the Chi-Yu, the Iron Hands, the Farigiraf, which I apologize in advance, I will probably pronounce about 8 different ways in this match, compared up with the Iron Bundle, the Landorus, and the Ursaluna. Now, the combination between the Ursaluna and the Farigiraf allow for this Trick Room capability. You can set up the reverse speed of using the Trick Room and now allow Ursaluna with the Flame Orb and the Guts to boost up its attack and just start sweeping through the competition.
It's still going to do a lot, especially when you look at that Chiempo being available on the other side. Maybe it does become a detriment to Victor's team if he wants to lean into that option. It does lower the defense of every single Pokemon on the field outside of itself with that sort of ruin ability. But I think what makes this matchup even more complicated is that Tornadus has Taunt. Oh. And now that's really kind of a Pokemon that you normally look at and you go, yeah, that's going to be really good. But one of the reasons why people are using Farigiraf is because of the Armor Tail ability. That is going to help keep this Farigiraf safe from any priority attacks that are going to be heading its way. And sadly for Tornadus, it's got the Prankster ability, which gives inherent priority to those status moves.
That's a great observation, and it really is, I suppose, the selling point of that Farigiraf as well, because it doesn't really overwhelm on the kind of offensive bits, but being able to have that ability, stopping all of that priority, is really nice to be able to see.
Yeah, I think that might play a role if for some reason Leonardo wants to lean into the Trick Room, then he does have that available to really help get that Trick Room up and make sure that it is going to be active for something like the Ursaluna. The other thing to consider is that Iron Hands is a pretty good Trick Room user, so if you want to shut down Victor's kind of stronger, more speedier options, since he has just a more naturally faster team than what we see on Leonardo's side, then you could lean into that and maybe you can find out if your Iron Hands is in fact slower than the one that is on Victor's side.
Exactly, and speaking of the slow Pokemon, the Farigiraf...
He doesn't have one, never mind, ignore me.
He doesn't have one, but the Farigiraf is definitely the kind of Pokemon that can benefit from that slow and steady pace. The one thing I love though is the Ursaluna that it has paired with it, because yes, you could bring it onto the field, maybe use that turn to get the Flame Orb activation to boost up your Guts, or you could always try and go for the Protect on there as well. The question, however, Rose, is Trick Room going to actually be viable in this matchup? That is something that these trainers will have to ascertain, and Victor may have to play around that strategy. These trainers are getting ready. Remember, they are both at X and 2. They do not want to drop down to X and 3. They want to make sure they can find a way to guarantee their place into that top 8 at the Latin America International Championships. Let's kick it over to the match. The leads are out. Leonardo is going to be bringing that Chi-Yu and the Iron Bundle, and for Victor Medina, it is the Rillaboom and the Fluttermane.
All right, let's get right into it. I mean, the Iron Bundle and Chiyu work in tandem so nicely together because Iron Bundle is that special attacker, so it can make advantage of that Beads of Ruin ability that Chiyu is going to be bringing. But Victor seems to have already kind of locked into a game plan for this where he sees the leads on the other side, and I don't know if he's too threatened by the fact that the Trick Room could be in the back.
Exactly, that Flutter Mane can go full on the offensive here now, able to go for that Terra Fairy as well to boost up the damage you can deal with something like the Moonblast to try and deal with this opposing Chiyu, because particularly with Chiyu on the field with the Beads of Ruin ability, that's going to help out the Flutter Mane as well, and it can capitalize on that and try and get the KO into this fish before it's able to deal big damage in return. The Rillaboom, for example, yes, it is running the Assault Vest, but it sure does not want to take one of these heat waves coming its way. We are going to see an early terrestrialization here. Rosemary is going to be on that Flutter Mane, of course, boosting itself up with the Fairy Terror.
Oh, that Fairy Terror is going to be so nice here, especially when you have that Chiyu on the other side. You just want to see if you can get even just a little bit more damage. And the Iron Bundle going to end up actually falling victim to this fake out right now. But Victor's going to have to be careful. The Iron Bundle does have access to Encore, so you want to make sure that you might not be able to deal with that in the next turn. But Chiyu is going to go for the overheat because it does end up surviving that Moonblast, and that is a huge amount of damage with the overheat. Chiyu packs a huge punch.
In the showdown of the special attackers there, Flutter Mane not quite able to get the KO, and Chiyu's showing Flutter Mane how it's done, able to get the one-hit KO there. Brilliant play from the Chiyu.
Such a good play there, and I think when you take a look at how Leonardo has to kind of navigate this matchup, the Trick Room is going to be so risky to try to get online. Farigiraf is not necessarily one of the best attackers in the meta, and so you kind of might suffer a little bit from bringing it, just to have to rely on that. You don't know where the damage is really going to come from, and Victor has such hyper-offensive options that you just might not be able to slow that game down enough. So the Chiyu and the Iron Bundle is a really great lead to put on the pressure, and Victor is sadly going to lose that Flutter Mane for all of his troubles.
Of course, the Iron Bundle not in the safest position either, considering the fact that Rillaboom has access to that priority Grassy Glide. That's still going to be able to deal some good damage into it. Iron Bundle also on Leonardo's side running that booster energy, so it doesn't have a focus dash to be able to contend with, and even if it did, it's been broken by the fake out previously anyway, so it's certainly sitting in a very vulnerable position, whereas Arcanine can possibly capitalize on this, maybe go for something like the Extreme Speed to try and pick up the KO against Chiyu. So I think it's a wise adjustment here from Leonardo to get it out of here.
And it's not a bad brain to have the Arcanine in it either, because this Iron Bundle does not have the Hydro Pump, so there's no worry really that Arcanine is actually going to be taking any significant damage this turn from the Iron Bundle, and the Rillaboom also doesn't want to stick around, because that Iron Bundle still does have that Encore, so may as well get that Rillaboom out of the way so it doesn't lock itself into the fake out. But the Protect is also just as good because you know what's coming your way. There's an Arcanine on the other side, and you had two juicy targets there for the Rock Slide.
Exactly, and the Rock Slide's going to come through. It will connect onto that Landorus, but a great adjustment here by Leonardo. It's going to be able to take that really well. It is a choice band on that Arcanine, so it still does maybe just about a quarter of damage there, but Landorus can take a couple more of these. And again, Victor doesn't have the utility to go for terrestrialization on the Arcanine. Anything ground orientated like a Stomping Tantrum that this Landorus is able to fire into the Arcanine is going to be able to get the KO. It is 4 times super effective.
This Arcanine is in a really good position right now. I think it's going to suffer a little bit on the damage output, just given that the Landorus did drop its attack stat, but you still have the choice band, which is one of the reasons why we do have that item choice on these Arcanines, because you're still able to dish out enough damage. But I think that this Arcanine is saying, maybe I want to lock into something different. I also see the Landorus on the other side, so Rillaboom is going to make a reappearance, which really opens the door here, because we're actually going to see a terrestrialization.
Yes, exactly, and particularly as a Choice Scarf Landorus, Arcanine knows it's not going to be outspeeding it in this situation. It's locked into the Rock Slide, can't even go for an Extreme Speed, and even that wouldn't get the KO. So I think a good adjustment by Victor to reset what that Arcanine is going to be able to do. Urshifu wisely going for a Detect here in the face of the Landorus that could easily be going for a Flying Terra Blast here. Actually was coming into the Freeze Dry as well. That would deal some amazing damage into the Water-type Urshifu, and the Terra Blast is coming through, but actually going into the Rillaboom that has come in here. Fantastic call by Leonardo. Rillaboom is down and out for the count.
There's a huge knockout here too, because that's already going to give Leonardo a 2 Pokemon advantage in this very first game. That Fluttermane got taken out of commission so early on when that overheat hit, and now that the Rillaboom had to switch into a super effective attack, it is also going to be out of here. So the Arcanine comes back in, it does get the Intimidate, but now Victor's back is against a wall. He can only choose to lock into one move for the rest of this game number 1.
I mean, who needs Trick Room when you've got speed on your side? This Iron Bundle, very, very speedy. It is running Booster Energy, and I believe it did get a Spoo Boost. I'm not 100% sure as I couldn't quite see, but we also have the Choice Scarf on the Landorus, so a lot of offensive pressure, and it is moving first here instead of the Landorus. So again, a Null Detect coming through on that Urshifu. A nice defensive play by Victor, particularly with the double up from Leonardo. That's what the Urshifu needs. And of course, the Arcanine is then able to get this Rock Slide off. It is going to be able to get the knockout on the Landorus, but Iron Bundle hanging around.
That is a ton of damage, and that double protect, that is a very low chance that can come through. I learned that the hard way, but it is definitely the play that Victor had to go for here, because you're banking on this Arcanine staying up long enough to be able to get these big KOs, and the Rock Slide is definitely the way. You have the Iron Hands on the other side now, so Leonardo could very much go for some type of fake out play, but the other thing too is that Victor is actually going to have the ability here to maybe just try to go for some damage. I think the Urshifu is still a very strong option to have, and if you're able to get the Iron Bundle out of the way, then this Urshifu is going to hurt, but I think you have to start to consider your options, that this Urshifu still has yet to do any damage.
The thing is, Urshifu's pinned in now. It's gone for the double detect. It really can't go for a triple. The Iron Hands can easily go for the fake out into that slot, and we've seen how speedy the Iron Bundle is. Arcanine's locked into Rock Slide, so it cannot go for a priority extreme speed here. So Iron Bundle will be safe to be able to go straight for that Freeze Dry into the opposing Urshifu here. There's the fake out. Now Freeze Dry following up. Is it going to be able to get the KO?
It's not quite. It's not quite, but Urshifu gets frozen. So even if the Urshifu was going to be able to get that attack off this turn, it now can't. So the Rock Slide comes into the Iron Bundle. It does get the knockout there, but it's all down to this Iron Hands for Leonardo's side, and Victor still has not been able to actually get the attack up, but it's just going to thaw, and it's going to flinch. What a series of events.
Do you know, there's something I've just learned there. Even though it's going to flinch, it's guaranteed there from the fake out, it still has the opportunity to go for that thaw. So a sigh of relief going into this next turn. Victor already knows that his Pokemon is back and on action. I think it is the Brazilian sun here. It's been able to shake that off very, very quickly. And now the turtles have changed a little bit here. Victor, I think, in a commanding position. Chiyu and the Iron Hands not known for their speed either.
No, they're really not. And I think the problem in this match is that you want to try to get the Arcanine's damage down onto the Chiyu and hope that the Urshifu is able to stick around enough to be able to actually get the attack off next turn. So smart here for Victor to just go for the detect, and even though he's able to get the thaw out, like, he still has to kind of play through these next few turns. Chiyu can go for the Dark Pulse, and it's just going to be a one-hit knockout. I was wondering if Leonardo was trying to fish for a flinch.
Honestly, Chiyu just took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say, what can the fish do to the Arcanine? The only option he has is to go for that Dark Pulse, but I was not expecting it to be able to get the KO, and I don't think Victor Medina was either, judging by his reaction.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of knowledge to be able to take away. Chiyu is usually kind of expected to be able to get the knockout with something like the overheat into a fairly frail Fluttermane, but at this point too, you kind of expect that Arcanine might have been able to withstand something like that.
Do you know, one thing to consider that is, I mean, that's a Choice Specs Dark Pulse as well. Something that will give it that little bit of extra oomph, but the Arcanine was so healthy that, you know, particularly with the speed advantage on the Chiyu, being able to outspeed the Arcanine, which I'll be honest, I wasn't necessarily sure was going to happen. I think obviously just swung that momentum straight into Leonardo's favor. Taking a little bit of a recap of the match, this was also a critical moment, absolutely felling the Rillaboom before Victor was able to capitalize on it. Although Arcanine definitely put in a amount of work here, getting some KOs, putting the Iron Bundle into a precarious situation. The Chiyu was nice and toasty in the back, able to come out and get the victory in this game 1.
Yeah, Leonardo made some intense calls that paid off in dividends. Just like so many times that Victor was trying to switch something in, I feel like Leonardo was just several steps ahead. So great lead there coming out from the Chiyu in the Iron Bundle, and Victor's going to have to figure out a way to get around this time, and I think it's going to be coming in the form of just not losing that Fluttermane so early, but it's such a tough call to make, because do you expect that it's going to get knocked out there? Are you going to commit the terrestrialization once again, or do you try to go for a different play that you feel like you might be able to get a little bit more out of, because you do have other options available besides something like just the single target?
It's a good question. question, and I think the Flutter Mane's actually a critical piece of the puzzle, so I would like to see Victor bring it again, but the early bench onto the, the early banking onto the terrestrialization just left it so vulnerable. I would possibly like to see the Tornadus come, if I'm being honest, although there is the potential for the Farigiraf to come, and there it is, it's front and center. Just being able to still go for something like the Rain Dance will negate some of the offensive pressure with the Fire-type moves that the Chi you can do. But we have got the Giraffe and Landorus on the field for Leonardo, and on Victor's side, once again, it's that Rillaboom and the Flutter Mane. But Rillaboom is in a bit of a difficult spot thanks to the Armateil ability. It cannot go for Fake Out or Grassy Glide.
No, it can't, but it still packs a punch, given that the fact that it does have the Wood Hammer, and so that is going to be on the grassy terrain. You also have access to the U-turn just to be able to help pivot out into a bit of a safer play, but the Landorus and the Farigiraf here from Leonardo, I feel like this does lend itself into some flexibility where maybe you do have some of that Trick Room mode available in the back, and this is just Leonardo just reading into the room and saying maybe there's an adjustment to the Chi and the Iron Bundle lead that I led. This is a huge switch up from him.
Honestly, I love this about Pokemon play. Leonardo has that one game advantage, so has the potential to shake things up a little bit, and now seeing the Farigiraf in the field, you know that potentially the Ursaluna is going to be in the back and able to come through. Again, the U-turn coming through here is going to deal some huge damage into that Rillaboom, allowing the Landorus to pivot in off the field. I would love to be able to see the Ursaluna come in here, maybe try and obviously get that burn set up, allowing its Gust ability to be activated as the Farigiraf is able to set up that Trick Room.
Oh, the Dazzling Gleam comes through first, so Ursaluna does take a bit of chip damage, and it's the read of the Wood Hammer into the Ursaluna just to get the knockout with that super effective damage. As soon as that Ursaluna moves in, Victor is staying super cool as a cucumber in this situation because he was expecting and hoping to see that slot get switched.
I'm blown away by that play. Fantastic observation by Victor to see that very likely the Trick Room is going to be set up, and actually it was one of those very standard plays. When you go for Trick Room, you just want to be able to set it up and then bring your Trick Room sweeper in from the back. And sometimes as the opponent, you have to identify, is your opponent going to play conservatively here? Are they going to go for that obvious play, or are they going to go for something different and punish you for it? And Victor identified that Leonardo was going to go for the very telegraph play and was able to capitalize on it. Yes, you now have Iron Hands on the field. That could always go for something like a fake out into the opposing side. However, it's definitely not the powerhouse that Ursaluna is. Now you have the potential to go for something a little stronger with the Flutter Mane. You know that fake out cannot come into that slot because it is a Ghost type.
It is, but let's also consider that Iron Hands has Heavy Slam. So this is going to be a super effective attack no matter what. So if the Iron Hands wants to read this, this is where we always see this kind of play out, right? There's a Flutter Mane on one side, a Fake Outer on the other. Do you expect that that Flutter Mane is going to Terra? Then it becomes vulnerable to the Fake Out, but Iron Hands is still able to hit it with a super effective attack. So Victor still has to think twice about what he wants to lock in here too.
That's the thing, you don't really need to go for the Fake Out. You have the speed advantage being in Trick Room, but in a way, if you're Leonardo, you almost want to kind of stall out your own Trick Room here, so maybe do slow things down a pace. It is actually just going to be the Wild Charge going down into the Arcanine, only doing about 1/3 of damage, and the Dazzling Gleam is going to be followed up by the Farigiraf that can do just a little bit of chip damage to both of these opponents. In contrast to chip damage, though, it's going to be the powerful Moonblast coming into that Pokemon and giving it its Citrus Berry recovery.
The recovery is really nice here because maybe the Farigiraf is able to stay around and take a little bit more advantage of the Trick Room, but things are quickly starting to get out of Leonardo's hands. Victor secured such a critical knockout onto the Ursaluna, and you understand that you might have wanted to just make sure that you set the pace there, but what about this Flutter Mane? You still have to figure out a way to be able to best it, and you can just continue to weave through some of these attacks. You have the Protects, and there's only so many turns of Trick Room left.
To be honest, I think you identified the best way to best it with that Heavy Slam. It's a very frail Pokemon on the physical side. Obviously, the Iron Hands has a lot of weight behind it to benefit from that Heavy Slam as well. So if you're Victor, I would probably get the Flutter Mane out of here now, start stalling through those remaining turns of Trick Room and allow Flutter Mane to be back in the speed tier that it wants to be. And the one thing I also have to appreciate from Victor here is the preservation of terrestrialization. We've seen him hover over that Fairy Terror on the Flutter Mane a couple of times here, but actually has identified he doesn't need it at this point, and now has the flexibility going forward. The Rillaboom is going to be able to join the field, again, maybe slowing things down a little bit more, a powerful Wood Hammer here or there, as the terrestrialization on the Iron Hands on Leonardo's side actually comes through. I love this adjustment. It's going to be that Fire Terror type. That means that it's not going to be affected by those Fairy type moves as strongly as it would have been done previously, and when stacked up with something like the Assault Vest, it really doesn't have to worry about the Flutter Mane that's choosing to stay on the field.
Yeah, I mean, this Flutterman is not scared of anything, I feel like, and that's going to be a drain punch into what was the Arcanine slot, so that Rillaboom taking that very comfortably and even able to hang on with just a sliver of HP. The Psychic as well, just going into the Protect of the Flutterman, trying to get it down into a much more manageable health range, but this Farigiraf is, again, not known for its special attack capabilities. It's really there to try to help be a little bit bulky and also try to get that Trick Room active, and it's not really well known for its bulk as much either.
It's certainly not, but with the low HP remaining on that Rillaboom, maybe the Farigiraf is able to get some damage off with something like the Dazzling Gleam, maybe just to pick up the KO on the Rillaboom, chip the Fluttermane, and then allow the Iron Hands to follow up with that Heavy Slam to be able to get the KO. But actually, it's getting out of there. These Trick Room turns are whittling away. It's time to bring Landorus back into the action. That can throw the Intimidate down onto the opposing Rillaboom and stop it from maybe going for one of those powerful Wood Hammers that we've seen. Then again, if it does go for that Wood Hammer, it's going to be able to KO itself in recoil.
Yeah, that's true. So I think Victor is going to say, maybe later. Save it for later, bring the Arcanine back out, and it's going to catch the exact two Pokemon. You can see Leonardo kind of shaking his head here. He wanted to get the board position just right so that the Landers would be able to help keep that physical attack in check. But now that it's time, Trick Room is gone. It's time for this Fluttermane to go show off what it's got. So it's time for that offensive Terra into that Fairy type to really help boost up these attacks.
Fluttermane's time to shine. It's all beautiful and bejeweled here on center stage, and the Drain Punch going to be able to come through into the Fluttermane. They're calling that it's going to be the Terrestrialization, not going to be able to be felt by its Ghost typing, but Fluttermane now can go for that Moonblast into the Landorus. It's not going to be able to pick up the KO though.
Yeah, not quite yet, but what a smart Terra there. Even just for the defensive capabilities, like you said, that Drain Punch just doing absolutely nothing, and Leonardo really not wanting to go for the Heavy Slam in this situation. And so still kind of whittling the HP away from the Pokemon that are on Leonardo's side. But I feel like Victor is in a really nice position right now.
Yes, the Arcanine can apply some pressure as well with something like the Rock Slide, particularly considering the Iron Hands has now turned into a Fire type. It's certainly not going to be able to appreciate that. And the Farigiraf able to come back in as well, maybe trying to preserve the Landorus for a little bit later on. Look at how much that Intimidate paid off though. The Heavy Slam does not manage to get the KO on the Fluttermane that's able to go for this Dazzling Gleam. It's going to be able to get the KO on the Farigiraf and do a little bit more damage to that opposing Iron Hands.
Yeah, the Iron Hands is now just on a short-lived life at this point. You do have a lot of different HP to be able to chew through, and you also still have a Pokemon in the back there for Victor that has yet to be revealed here to Leonardo. Now we get a chance to see the Trick Room expire, so that is just a lot of work that the Farigiraf was able to put in that regard. And the Landorus at this point also gets to come in with that Choice Scarf intact and outside of those Trick Room conditions.
I mean, talk about board positions. It's the perfect time to get that Landorus in on action and throw an Intimidate down onto that Arcanine. The Arcanine as well on Victor's side, we know is going to be locked into that Rock Slide with the Choice Band. So I think in a great position to possibly even get 2 KOs here if it is able to survive whatever the Landorus with its Choice Scarf is going to be able to throw its way.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Stomping Tantrum right now. That would end up being kind of problematic, but your options at this point are trying to actually get through this speedy Fluttermane. The Stomping Tantrum does land its mark into the Arcanine, so that is going to be a knockout there, and Victor has to bring something else into that slot, but it's still going to be the Heavy Slam that Leonardo relies upon to try to take out this Fluttermane. If you can get the speed control in your favor in that sense, then you're in a pretty good position. But Leonardo is locked into the Stomping Tantrum, and you have the Rillaboom now coming back in.
Yes, you know, I almost would have liked to have seen the Rillaboom join that previous turn as well, just to be able to preserve the Arcanine a little bit more. And obviously with hindsight, you could always have gone for some good damage with that Fluttermane as well, maybe trying to get the KO onto both the Landorus and the opposing Iron Hands. But Rillaboom is now in play. The one question, however, is it going to be able to get some damage on the board? With the Fake Out must be so tempting to go down into this Landorus.
It is the speediest Pokemon on the field at this point, so it does feel like that is the prime target to hit with that Fake Out. But this is the last 2 Pokemon here for Leonardo in this game, and there you go, the Fake Out into the Landorus. That is just going to be a clean knockout, and it's all down to this Iron Hands, which is going to take a single target Dazzling Gleam, and even though it is that Terra-Fire, it is going to take just that chip damage that puts it in range, potentially, of him being picked up here by what's in the back, as well as the Rillaboom that's going to have priority Grassy Glide.
That's the thing, the Iron Hands might fall victim to its own attack here with that recoil from the Wild Charge as well. It's still got a little bit bit left in the tank, but the Rillaboom is now very happy to be unleashed with this priority once again. We already saw the fake out into Landorus, and now, like you said, Rosemary, you can easily follow up with a Grassy Glide and close out this match. And if it needs a little bit more help, considering it is now going down into a Fire type, let's bring your Water type into the match, and that will be able to certainly close out the game.
Yep, and we're just going to go for the heavy hitting moves as well. You just want to go for as much damage as possible. Don't even give that Iron Hands a chance, and that is going to be this series tied up. It's 1-1, Victor versus Leonardo, and we are going to a game number 3.
Look at that, us and a game number 3 once again.
Name a more iconic trio.
Exactly, the 3 sets all needed together to make it happen. That's what we're seeing here at LAIC. Of course, one of the things that was so dominant in that game was the amazing Woodhammer call by Victor Medina in turn 1 when we saw the Ursaluna join. Maybe it was turn 1, turn 2. I think it was turn 1. Being able to absolutely destroy the Ursaluna. Here we go with the Woodhammer, stopping Leonardo from capitalizing on the Trick Room that he was able to successfully set up. That just meant that Victor already had so much dominance in that game too.
Yeah, I think just knocking out that big physical threat also saved that Rillaboom for just a little bit more. You could see that Victor was a little bit upset about how much damage he took from the U-turn, and quite honestly, that was a lot. I think it was also that critical hit on top of that, so you're just taking kind of a big chunk there. And just going back to kind of those ends of those Trick Room turns, I definitely miscounted the number of turns that were left, and a part of it was just that Victor had again, kind of thought about the end game. You had 2 turns left, you go for the Terra, you expect the Drain Punch, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to be kept safe either way, and you're still getting more damage down regardless by having that Terra Fairy available. So he made a really good call there, and it paid off by that Flutter Mane being able to take advantage of the turns that were left outside of that Trick Room.
Exactly, and actually it doesn't matter with the remaining Trick Room turns that were there because the Intimidate came through from the Arcanine as well.
He definitely planned that.
Oh yeah, it definitely gave the Flutter Mane the breathing room it needed for it still to have that time to shine and go into the Terrestrialization and start dealing out that big damage. And it is one of those things, sometimes you can stall out a Trick Room game and then put yourself in a position to be like, oh, okay, the speeds are back in my favor. But actually, if you can use those last couple of turns to already get an edge in, it does just swing the momentum into your favor a little bit more. Game 3, do you think we're still going to see Trick Room? Because I'll be honest, I don't think it's going to be the safest strategy at this point.
I think it's a really tough call because you do have sort of this split 50-50 team. You have that fast mode with the Iron Bundle and the Chi-Yu, as we saw in that game number 1, and you have that slower Trick Room option that we ended up seeing in that game number 2. So why not split the difference a little bit as we get into this game 3? We've got the Chi-Yu and the Landorus here for Leonardo, and a big switch up here from Victor with that Chien-Pao now making an appearance for this match.
Honestly, what I love most about this is the cross synergy we've got. We have got the Beats of Ruin from the Chi-Yu, lowering the special defense, and that's actually going to help itself and the opposing Flutter Mane out. And at the same time, you've got the Chien-Pao with the Sword of Ruin ability, lowering the defenses, helping out itself and the opposing Landorus. So it's actually a pretty even Steven at the moment, but it just means that the offensive pressure is so monumental from all 4 of these attackers.
And now this is where you have to kind of play that 50-50. What do you protect? You know that Landorus can't, and actually Chi-Yu can't either, because both of the Pokemon on Leonardo's side are holding those choice items. So what you could do here is just go for a double protect if you want. You can start to fish out what is going to be coming in that direction, or you read that Leonardo does not want either of these Pokemon in and may make a swap as well. So that's a lot of information to have to take in on this first turn, and that's something that Leonardo's team is really good at.
Yeah, Victor could go for that double protect, but Leonardo could also punish that, like you said, by making some adjustments. We're actually going to see the switch come from the Chien-Pao first of all, so we know that Landorus is going to be staying in. Choice Scarf would have kept it in the field. As Arcanine joins the field to throw down the Intimidate, this is obviously only really going to be detrimental against that Landorus, but also its typing means that the Chi-Yu isn't going to have as much of a party as it would have had previously. I'm sure the temptation to go for Fire type moves into what was previously an Ice type will be strong, but as we've seen, the Choice Specs Dark Pulse can throw a spanner in the works as well, so I wonder if that's a read Leonardo has made.
It sure is, and Leonardo just opting to go for the attacks in this turn 1 could spell disaster if he does get these reads right. It's going to be the Terra Blast flying type into the Flutter Mane. It does bring it down to a pretty low amount, but you've got the Dazzling Gleam in response. It's not going to be doing nearly as much as what this Dark Pulse is going to end up doing in response, which is just a KO onto this Flutter Mane. So Leonardo just leaning into the offensive options that he has, and it pays off in a big way.
Yep, just like game 1, able to remove that Flutter Mane very early early from play. The key difference, however, is Victor did not go for the Terrestrialization on that Flutter Mane, so he still has access to that and the flexibility as the rest of this Game 3 progresses. Of course, now the information you have is you know what these Pokemon are locked into. It's going to be the Dark Pulse for the Chi-Yu and the Terra Blast for that Landorus, and that's something these Pokemon do have to play around. The speed advantage will definitely be with that Landorus, but the Chien-Pao has the utility to always go for a Sucker Punch here as well.
I think the Sucker Punch is a really juicy option, but then what if there is a possibility of Leonardo kind of switching something into that slot? Ooh. You still have to think about those decisions of if the Chi even wants to stick around in these scenarios. It's looking pretty good right now. You're like, yeah, okay, I can hit the Chien-Pao, but I don't think like the Arcanine takes a whole lot of damage here either, unless you really want to kind of play that gamble again of if the Arcanine does fall like it did the first game.
The other thing is that Chien-Pao is running Sacred Sword. That's something that will deal incredible damage to the opposing Chi-Yu. And if something switched in, maybe like, like the Farigiraf, I got it there, or even something like the Ursaluna, then that's not going to appreciate taking one of those either. It is indeed going to be the Farigiraf. We have now seen all 4 Pokemon. There is no Ursaluna here, but it is going to be the Sacred Sword into that Pokemon, doing about a third of damage as Arcanine follows up with the Rock Slide. It's not going to be able to do the double up, but to do a little bit of chip onto that Iron Hands instead.
And Victor was actually kind of hovering over whether or not he wanted to commit into that Terra normal extreme speed from the Arcanine, and had he done that, he would have been locked into it, and it would have set him back a few turns, having to get it out and try to deal with the Farigiraf in the meantime. So very nice to be able to just lean into the Rock Slide, just get some of that spread damage down, and a nice chunk of damage into that Farigiraf. But the Urshifu is now going to end up taking its place. The Icicle Crash was trying to land into the Farigiraf to be able to pick up the knockout, but it is sadly unable to hit its mark as it is not 100% accurate. And we're going to see the Iron Hands get a little bit of that recovery back from what it ended up taking on the Rock Slide while the Trick Room goes up.
Honestly, Farigiraf is putting in some work at this point. It's able to dodge out of 2 attacks, able to stop any potential priority, and now is able to set up the Trick Room. And I really like the way Leonardo has brought it here without the Ursaluna, because its main job is to have that ability on the field. There is so much priority on Victor's side, whether it's coming from the Urshifu, the Chien-Pao, the Arcanine, then you can stop your opponent from going for this. And now Victor, once again, has to play through these 5 turns of Trick Room to be able to put himself back into a position where the speed is in his favor. You can see him shaking his head. Is definitely an uphill struggle, but he has the capability to be able to do it.
You are going to end up committing the Terra here, and the Ghost could help out. I don't know what Leonardo's reaction is to this specific game moment. Maybe he's feeling a little relieved, maybe he's not, as it's just going to be that Terra Ghost and the Detect from Victor. Hoping that this defensive play is going to work out, as that Protect is going to negate this Wild Charge. And then is the Chien-Pao going to be able to actually get its move off? Well, Dazzling Gleam comes out first because we are in the Trick Room, and it does end up hitting into the Chien-Pao, who is just teared away from its Dark type. But the Icicle Crash finally lands its mark into the Farigiraf. But now we get a chance to reveal that it wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah, was not going to be enough to be able to get the KO, but I really like the Ghost Terrestrialization here on the Chien-Pao as well. Not only does it stop the Dazzling Gleam from being able to deal super effective damage, but something like the Drain Punch as well that's awfully tempting into the Chien-Pao would be null and void by the Ghost typing. So Victor is starting to slow down this Trick Room a little bit. He has utility to go for Protects and Detects as well, and we have seen a couple of double of those thrown out in the course of the match. So he does have the potential to be able to start piloting around this. You don't really have to worry about the Farigiraf anyway. It doesn't deal a huge amount of damage. The issue is going to be that Iron Hands, however, because it has the capability to go for those Wild Charges into the Urshifu, and also just slow and steadily chip away at this opposing Chien-Pao, particularly when the Farigiraf is able to go for a Helping Hand.
Helping Hand, that is going to be that Detect, so you're going to go ahead and get that Protect once again, but the Drain Punch into the Urshifu, you were hoping that the Helping Hand was going to boost it up enough to be able to get the knockout, but it can't even hit the target as the Icicle Crash comes through to finally pick off this Farigiraf, and so that is another Pokemon down here for Leonardo, and he has no choice except to bring in 2 of the more fast Pokemon that are on his team, and that's going to be the Chi-Yu for now.
My favorite thing about that turn was as soon as the detect went off, you just saw the stare from Victor across at his opponent. Have you read into this? And you just saw the desperation in Leonardo's face being like, oh no, that's where the protect went. So a fantastic call by Victor here. Once again, the Chi Power is really focused, landing these icicle crashes now and finally being able to get the KOs. But the Chi Yu in such a dominant position, it has those choice specs. It's going to be able to deal like huge amount of damage to something like the Chi Pal. And particularly with the Iron Hands able to go for something like a wild charge into the Urshifu, that means that it's not going to be able to capitalize on possibly a surging strikes into Chi-Yu. The one benefit, however, is you have finally got rid of the Armor Tail, though, so priority is back on the table. Something like a Sucker Punch, something like an Aqua Jet could shut down this opposing Chi-Yu. Aqua Jet is enough to be able to get the KO against it, so you don't have to worry about the little fish at all.
Yeah, it's going to be out of here, and you also couldn't even tear away because I believe the Landorus ended up being on the receiving end of that one. The Wild Charge does get a KO in response, but Victor still has that Arcanine in the back to be able to land this Intimidate down onto this Iron Hands, and you're still taking so much recoil, and the Icicle Crash is yet to come through. That is going to take this Iron Hounds down to half HP.
And because these are the last two remaining Pokemon on Leonardo's side, the Arcanine's Intimidate is going to stick around. That is going to be affecting the Landorus and the Iron Hands on Leonardo's side. Both of them physical attackers.
But wait, the Landorus can also do the same.
That's true.
So it does even the playing field just a little bit, but this Qianpao is still able to use its Sword of Ruin ability to drop the defense of everything else around it. There's also one more turn of Trick Room. Victor is counting those turns because he wants to capitalize on the fact that this Landorus is holding a Choice Scarf.
That's the thing, you almost want to go for the Protect to stall it out around the Iron Hands, but then you know that the Landorus is going to be speedy as soon as that Trick Room is over. So this is your one opportunity to be able to remove it from the field. The same for this Arcanine, the fact that it's locked into something from the Choice Band, so you have to choose your move choice carefully, because that is how this set is going to finish out with all of these locked in choices. It's going to be the Drain Punch. It doesn't get the KO though, but that is a lot of health regenerated on that Iron Hands.
Yeah, the Iron Hands does capitalize off of this final turn of Trick Room, but it's going to be the Arcanine that moves next. It lands into the Landorus, and we saw Victor cover for it to double into the Landorus, just in case the Arcanine couldn't get the knockout here. And so Victor gets to hopefully land some extra damage into this Iron Hands. It's going to be the Icicle Crash. It does connect. It's not going to miss, and that Iron Hands does get whittled down to that half HP once again, but it's going to be those Twisted Dimensions returning to normal as Qianpao and Arcanine, they're happy about this.
Oh, certainly. They're back on top form here as the Iron Hands is now going to be the slowest thing on the field. Qianpao once again finds his mark with the Icicle Crash, taking it down into the red zone, and Arcanine again with the accuracy going down into the Iron Hands. It is not going to be enough to be able to get the KO. Once again, Drain Punch is going to come through, but as long as this Qianpao is able to find its mark in the following turn, it is going to be the victory for Victor Medina.
Yeah, Victor was even just kind of fishing for a flinch. You could have gotten that with the Icicle Crash or the Rock Slide there, and at this point you can just go for a 100% accurate move. Just go for the Sacred Sword. It's going to be neutral damage. Get the knockout onto the Iron Hands, and that's going to seal the deal. Victor Medina with a 2-1 victory over Leonardo Chinchilla, and well on his way to the top 8 here at LAIC.
That was honestly one of the hardest fought best of threes I have watched all weekend. You can see the relief in this trader's face. He's done it. He knows that he has been able to go through with that X&2 record, but it was definitely not an easy battle, particularly from that game 1 that Leonardo was able to win. Then Victor suddenly had to make sure that you win back those games 2 and 3. Game 2, Leonardo shook it up a little bit, bringing that Trick Room move, but Victor with that amazing call into the Ursaluna just meant that he took control. I was worried when Trick Room went up in this particular game, but once again, Victor showing the high caliber of player he is, being able to stall around, eliminate the Farigiraf with that Armor Tail, so that finally the priority potential could be back on the field.
And it was amazing that he did that with a Qianpao too, a Pokemon that is considered to be pretty frail, especially against the Pokemon that he saw on the other side, but that Ghost Terra, so smart as a defensive tool to help navigate those Trick Room turns so that he could prepare for the endgame where he had locked down this Iron Hands.
And it was nice to see the Ghost Terra used a little differently, because we often used to see it on Qianpao in order to avoid maybe a fake out to break the Focus Sash, but actually here it wasn't about the Focus Sash at all, it was just about the longevity on the field, and you can see that key Pokemon getting the victory here, the final KO on the Iron Hands, meaning that Victor Medina has gone through with an X&2 record.
Yeah, that's a kind of incredible, and this is going to be another top finish here for Victor Medina to add onto his resume of all these impressive finishes that he has had over the last few seasons, I think, of just Scarlet and Violet in general.
Exactly, and I think he's definitely well on his way. You can hear the crowd cheering as well. There's a huge amount of support here in the audience, and I'm sure at home for both these players. Commiserations, of course, to Leonardo. Played incredibly well, and I really have to respect the adaptation, the flexibility of the team, that you have this amazing fast mode, but also that slow mode with Trick Room, and particularly in the Game 3, I love the way that you brought the Giraffe without the Ursaluna. I think that was really nice, because you could just use the ability to put so much pressure, or I suppose put Victor on the back foot, stop him from going for all this priority, particularly when you do the Rillaboom could potentially be there with Fake Out and Grassy Glide. It really neutralizes it as a threat.
It does, and it's a heavy investment to bring in something like the Ursaluna, because either you do fall to something like that Woodhammer that did best in that Game 2, or you have to invest your Terra in order to keep it up, and then you just are vulnerable to the Sucker Punch there from the Chien-Pao. Even if the Trick Room is up, you still get the priority to activate under those conditions, and it is going to be a tough rank, but super commiserations to Leonardo. He's also not out of it just yet. He could win out this final round and still have a good shot to make it into the top 8 if all the cards fall right. And he put on a great display, especially in that game number 1. I thought he brought the best leads that he could for that first game, and he ran away with it.
Oh, fantastic, and it came very, very close to the end game of that Game 3, but of course, there can only be one winner from that best of 3 set, and in this one it was Victor Medina, so let's go over to the stage for our winners interview.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks, Lou. I am here with the winner of round 13 at LAIC, Victor Medina. Congratulations. What a set. You looked so relieved afterwards. Tell me what's going through your head.
I'm so grateful for the set. It was an amazing set, and I think I'm locked to top 8, so I'm feeling very, very relieved. And yeah, it's been an amazing set.
As well, you were down that first game in the set, and second game we saw a hard pivot coming out into Trick Room. Were you nervous at that point? How are you feeling then?
Trick Room was his strongest option into my team. I have a Tornadoes team, so I can't taunt him. So the 3 games, I had to be ready for that Trick Room mode. He needed to be ready too for my options, so he leaded very good Chiyu bundle the first game. But I needed to lead with Claramain and another slow Pokémon to try to counter that Trick Room, because it was the strongest against my team, so yeah.
And as mentioned, that should be top 8 now locked. How are you feeling about the competition here in Sao Paulo?
It's been amazing. It's been an amazing competition. I'm feeling great. I actually reached Brazil at 5 a.m. yesterday because my flight got canceled, so I didn't even know if I was playing this event. It's been amazing so far. I think I'm in top 8. Now just let's see what happens. I hope I can win it all. It's very, very difficult. There are very strong players here, but I'm very grateful for this whole experience.
It's been a great event, and I'm sure people out there cheering you on. So before I let you go and get rested for your last Swiss match, do you have any words or shout-outs?
Shout-outs to all the Spanish community who is supporting me. Shout-outs to Antonio, who made the team with me, also to Miguel and Sufi, and also to my family that is always very supportive.
Well, congratulations yet again on this win. Best of luck for the final round of Swiss. As for now, as we get that ready, time to head back over to our casters.